So given that many OnePlus fans are now looking for a new home, courtesy of many OxygenOS changes and tweaks to the company as a whole, you may be looking at the OnePlus 10 Pro and the Pixel 6 Pro, wondering which is the right option to pick. And with both devices starting at $899, there is a lot to compare. So let's do just that. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. At least from a raw specifications perspective, things are heavily in favour of the OnePlus 10 Pro over Google's late 2021 flagship. OnePlus's newly released hardware includes the best, or at least the current best, Qualcomm processor, which does offer far greater performance levels than Google's own custom Tensor chip, which is found in the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro. And while it doesn't quite hit the heights of the best Android flagship smartphone chipsets, Tensor does provide benefits in other areas such as AI processing, on-device translation, and a few other things to boot. It's still a very high performer, but it isn't quite up to the scratch of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Of course, raw benchmarks only do tell one side of the story, as elsewhere the two devices do stack up incredibly closely. The Pixel 6 Pro even comes with an actual greater base RAM allocation, at least in North America, as the standard is 12GB. The OnePlus 10 Pro is currently limited to 8GB in certain regions, which, although it is paired with a technically faster processor, does mean that long-term multitasking may favour the Google Pixel 6 Pro. Both devices come with UFS 3.1 storage, and this just ensures that every interaction is fluid and file transfers are snappy, but when doing things such as loading apps side by side, things really are almost indistinguishable despite the chipset bump on the newer 10 Pro. Google's Android optimizations will also certainly improve over time, which is a major selling point to the Pixel 6 Pro, but it is worth noting that certain applications, particularly games, do run at higher frame rates and are marginally smoother on the OnePlus 10 Pro, courtesy of that improved Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor. It's also worth noting the Pixel 6 Pro and the OnePlus 10 Pro both come with curved QHD Plus LTPO displays, but with some differences between these. You will get a slightly higher PPI density on the newer OnePlus 10 Pro, but a marginally shifted 20:9 aspect ratio versus 19.5:9 on the Pixel 6 Pro, for instance. As for the display technology, effectively LTPO displays can just switch between frame rate depending upon the on-screen content, all the way down to 1Hz. This is a basic summation, as this will depend on the software tuning and the apps in question as to how often this will occur and how much of a battery benefit it will offer across both devices. The OnePlus 10 Pro though has what OnePlus is naming the LTPO 2.0 tech, which can offer greater frame rate ranges for specific on-screen content, so it should switch between 1 and 120Hz more often, depending on applications being displayed. When using the default display settings though, the Pixel 6 Pro, it is edged by the OnePlus 10 Pro's display, but Google's flagship does offer a greater maximum brightness. That's 842 nits versus 734 nits on the 10 Pro. At various brightness levels though, it is worth noting that the OnePlus 10 Pro does offer greater colour reproduction and overall accuracy, so it's a case of which curved display you like more will be dependent on whether you want a brighter display or a more colour accurate one. Both devices come with in-display optical fingerprint scanners, but there is certainly more than an edge to the OnePlus 10 Pro here. Unlocking speed has increased on the Pixel with updates over the past few months, but it is still just a step behind the OnePlus's latest flagship device, at least with regards to biometric unlocks. In a hand and from a distance, the designs do feel very distinct. The matte finish of the OnePlus 10 Pro and the dense construction are very ensuring when you grasp this phone for the first time. Sadly though, the colour options are limited to just two for the OnePlus, with black and green being the options, whereas the glossy finishes of the Pixel 6 Pro available in black, in white, kind of grey, and then a yellow option or champagne option is going to be a major benefit if you want a little bit of extra colour on your smartphone. Despite both of these devices shipping with Android 12, the Pixel 6 Pro already has a newer software version available that can be installed, and that likely won't come to the OnePlus 10 Pro at least for a little while. Material U and dynamic colour do play a prominent and pivotal role in Android 12, which, as we mentioned, is pre-installed out of the box on both of these devices, but it's definitely more noticeable on the Pixel 6 Pro because these changes are less noticeable on the OnePlus 10 Pro, which is simply now running OxygenOS as a skin atop of ColorOS. In years prior, the Pixel series and the OnePlus flagship phones ran very similar software builds. In 2022 and beyond, the two are further apart than ever before, and that might be a sore point for hardcore OnePlus fans, which were definitely sold on OxygenOS. On the Pixel 6 Pro with Android 12 and 12.1, almost every UI portion and all default apps adhere to the core colours and tones which are extracted from your wallpaper choice, which is part of that dynamic colour and Material U theming setup. This includes all Google app widgets, and the result is a truly unique and cohesive experience. Conversely, if you hate ColorOS, then we would probably suggest steering clear of any OnePlus devices running Android 12 and newer, as OxygenOS is now merely branding for Oppo's software skin, specifically for OnePlus hardware. That's not to say it isn't without features, as ColorOS/OxygenOS is definitely feature rich, but Android 12L or 12.1 on the Pixel 6 Pro does include a number of exclusive features of its own, which are tied to the hardware, including things such as on-device live translation, magic eraser, assistant voice typing, and much more. As I mentioned, not to be left behind, the OnePlus 10 Pro includes a suite of enhancements, including improved gaming modes, Zen Mode 2.0, better haptic controls, plus enhanced dark mode tuning, and of course it has a lot of extra customization options up its sleeve too. Google's support period does favour the Pixel 6 Pro, and although there have been update delays and maybe a few bugs here in recent months, OnePlus themselves do have a sloppy track record at getting updates to devices as they start to age. You will be supported up to and including Android 15 on the Pixel 6 Pro and the OnePlus 10 Pro, but Google will provide a further 2 years of regular security patches to its current generation flagship. Because of the slight delay in the releases though, this means that some level of software support will run up until October 2026. Conversely, OnePlus will cease offering bi-monthly software updates at the same time because of that extended release schedule, but this will mean just 4 years of official software support. So in theory, the Pixel 6 Pro does have longer software support, even though they both will end up being unsupported at the same time. Boasting the same 5000 mAh internal cell sizes, the Pixel 6 Pro and OnePlus 10 Pro merely differ in the charging rates available. If you value super fast charge speeds though, then it's simply no contest here, as the OnePlus 10 Pro includes 80W wired charging in global regions, 65W wired charging in North American markets, and 50W wireless charging with the dedicated Warp charger accessory. A problem here is that despite claiming 30W maximum charge speeds, the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro's real wired charging speeds are actually much lower. Disappointingly, even with that new charge brick, which you have to buy separately, you can only achieve 23W peak charging speeds via wire on the Pixel 6 Pro, and this is more annoying given that there is no charge brick in the box this time around. OnePlus themselves, they're still providing the appropriate chargers for each region in the retail packaging for all devices, which does sting even further still for the Pixel 6 series. In terms of lifespan though, at least in our testing, the OnePlus 10 Pro and the Pixel 6 Pro do attain similar usage periods. The new Tensor chip though, in conjunction with the adaptive battery settings found in Android 12 for Pixel phones, could favour the 6 Pro though, as longevity will improve over time as it starts to learn your usage patterns quite in depth. That said though, a day of usage is par for the course across both smartphones here, but being able to top up your phone from 0 to 100% in under 35 minutes with that 80W charger is definitely going to be a major benefit for the 10 Pro. With that 6045W wired charging for those in North America, that's still very fast, and you're going to get your phone topped up in under an hour. And this is going to mean increased usage without having to compromise on charge speed. On paper and in practice, the Pixel 6 Pro camera hardware setup is vastly superior to the entire setup found on the OnePlus 10 Pro due to the downgrades over the OnePlus 9 Pro from last year. And in terms of camera software features though, things are heavily in favour of the OnePlus this time around, with more modes, Hasselblad tuning, and Pro controls available at your fingertips that the Pixel series has never officially offered directly. That said though, if you want excellent zoom capabilities, the Pixel 6 Pro is going to be a no-brainer for you. Also on top of that, shots taken with that main wide lens, also offer greater depth thanks to that larger Samsung GN1 50-megapixel sensor, and then it adds in that signature contrasty visual appeal on top of that. The OnePlus 10 Pro has a good camera, but not what we consider great or quite up to the top standard of the industry. You'll get an interesting 150-degree ultra-wide-angle lens, but this is at the cost of the Sony IMX766 ultra-wide sensor, which was one of the best we'd ever tested, and overall, the move to a Samsung JN1 does provide quite soft images, at least when you view them in post. The inferior 3.3x telephoto zoom lens also lets the setup down a little bit as far as we're concerned. It is though those added and enhanced modes where you may be interested in the OnePlus 10 Pro though. Google offers a number of Pixel exclusive camera features and things such as cinematic pan, live HDR plus for video, night sight portrait and more, but the OnePlus 10 Pro has many modes to play around with. You're also able to capture 12-bit RAW images on every single lens. That's a big bonus for photography nerds out there, as is the neat Hasselblad X-Pan mode, which lets you experiment and play around. But that said, results can be mixed due to that slightly inferior camera setup. On top of that though, you can record video at up to 8K resolution on the OnePlus 10 Pro. It is capped at 4K 60 on the Pixel 6 Pro, and there is the ability with the newer device to record video in the log format, along with a dual video mode, which lets you capture the selfie and rear camera simultaneously. It is also worth noting that the OnePlus 10 Pro does have a higher resolution selfie camera, but it can overexpose images a little more often than the Pixel, maybe due to some camera tuning issues. Processing of photos and videos is fast on both handsets, but the end results are more often than not superior on the Pixel 6 Pro. It just excels at point and shoot smartphone photography with sharp, accurate stills and solid video across the board. That said, the OnePlus 10 Pro offers good colours and the Hasselblad tuning is certainly improving with each smartphone release. If you want controls, we'd say go for the OnePlus 10 Pro. If you just want excellent point and shoot results, then it's a Pixel 6 Pro all the way. So to summarise this entire comparison, for long-time OnePlus fans, the past few years may have you looking over at the Google Pixel series with a little bit of envy. Given the move away from that fast and smooth ethos has kind of helped propel older OnePlus devices into the upper echelons of Android fans' most wanted lists, it's actually understandable that you may have cast your eye elsewhere as things have changed and the merger with Oppo has kind of gone on without any sort of brakes being pulled. The OnePlus 10 Pro is a great phone in its own right, but even with some software woes of its own, the Pixel 6 Pro does usurp it in a few key areas. Given that the OnePlus 10 Pro and the Pixel 6 Pro both retail for $899 in North America, we think you get a little bit more bang for your buck with the Google smartphone, plus you get that clean software experience that OxygenOS no longer offers. I do though want to know which device you would choose or why you've chosen a specific one over the other down below. Are you a OnePlus 10 Pro person or a Pixel 6 Pro person? I'm really interested to know your thoughts, and I do hope this helped you if you are trying to determine which is the right device for you to pick up. Until next time though, this is Damien with 95 Google saying thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little comparison, and I will speak to you later.